Hey, Lori Ballen with Lori Ballen team out here in Las Vegas, Nevada with Keller Williams. Today, I want to share with you something that I hope will basically help you be a better real estate agent, especially if you're new or maybe if you've been removed from the day to day transactions. I want to talk to you about what it's actually like to be a buyer because I just bought a house. I'm actually buying two houses this year. Crazy how that happens. I just bought a house for my mother to live in, and I'm now buying a new construction house for myself that's going to close later this year. So during this process, I saw some things as a buyer that I honestly wish would have been different. And I thought, I wonder if a real estate agent who has either never bought a house themselves or bought a house with a spouse that didn't really pay attention to what was going on, or hasn't bought a house in a long time, really understands how we can improve this process for our buyers, and not just for our buyers, our sellers too. But I'm specifically thinking about that first time home buyer or that buyer that was removed from the first transaction and didn't really know what was going on. Example, I've owned I think I've only owned one house before through marriage, but I wasn't really part of the transaction. My ex-husband handled all of that when we were purchasing a home. So I didn't really learn much. I was more into picking the home and I really didn't learn that much in the process. And then when I got into real estate as an agent, I didn't handle that piece of the equation. So I never really learned the process of mortgage and financing and escrow and down, all of those types of things that went, how that was communicated to the buyer. Okay. So what I found this time as being a buyer, I'm paying attention to it firsthand, is that communication fails on multiple levels. And I don't want this for my buyers. Like I said, I have a team, and I've now been talking to members of my team, looking more into how can we make sure that this process is improved as far as communication goes. So let me give you some examples. The first one is when I started looking into what credit score I needed to buy a house. That was actually the very beginning when I was looking at anything. So I got a divorce in 2016, moved into an apartment on my own. I knew at that time I wasn't going to buy because there were so many things I didn't know yet about my future that I needed to get figured out first. So I thought renting a place, I'm going to feel safe. I'm raising my daughter there, and I'll look into buying a house when it makes sense. So I got really focused on making sure that I was in a position to buy a house. So I was making sure my credit score was high enough. I was putting some money aside. I was paying off taxes. I was paying off debt, doing whatever I needed to do to get myself in a good position. Then when I thought I was close, I started feeling it out. So I'm online and I'm Googling things, and I'm looking at, of course, I have my own real estate agent website that talks about credit score. So I was able to use my own site for that piece. So once I've kind of got a ballpark of where I needed to be in the credit score range, and by the way, if you have not written that blog yet or made that video yet, that is a fantastic social post piece for your newsletter, email drip campaign, text drip, Facebook chat bot, your video, your blog, anything about what credit score is needed to buy a house. That's actually one of the blogs that brings me in significant traffic on my real estate agent website. So generally speaking, when somebody starts to poke around, that is one of the questions they have. So you want them to find your content, right, when it comes to that. The next step was I started Googling mortgage, what is my house payment going to be? Or what would a house payment be on a $500,000 house? Or things like, how much house can I afford, right? And that's when I started really learning about the debt to credit ratios and some general expenses. So in those first phases, I was using the internet. And this is what most buyers do before they actually contact a real estate agent. Why? Because they really only contact a real estate agent when it's time to look at properties, or they started poking around online and saw something they liked and now they want to ask info. I don't think the average buyer thinks to themselves, I need to call a real estate agent and ask before they start Googling and using social media to ask questions and things like that. So when I got myself to the point where I thought my credit score was in the range, I thought I had enough down payment, then I actually got connected with a mortgage lender. Now, the first mortgage, the first mortgage I did was I'm not going to say the name, but it was a broker related mortgage company that completely failed in the whole communication level. So I knew I wasn't going to use them. Then I was connected to a friend's real estate agent, and a mortgage broker. And what he did really well was he called me that night, gave me some info, but then he totally dropped the ball after the fact. Didn't follow up, didn't keep, even when I had questions, they weren't real thorough. So as a buyer now, I've been through 2 lenders that are not getting me what I want. And that's a problem. So I realized early on that equation, that loan, the lender equation is actually one of the biggest ones that's going to make the real estate agent look good or bad, right? Because the real estate agent depends on that lender. And obviously I already knew I was going to use my team for my real estate transaction. But as an agent, you want to have a good lender partner. And going through this process, I really learned a lot about the communication on the lender part and what kind of things I think we as real estate agents can do to jump in and help. Okay. So first one's gone. So I loop back and I call one I had left a message with in the beginning that is somebody that my team uses and really likes a lot. So ended up getting her on the phone and having a great conversation. And I really started figuring out, okay, this is where I need to be with credit. This is where I need to be with down payment. This is where I need to be with income. And then I started looking around. Let me go take a look at what's in the market now that I know what I can afford. And my challenge was that I had, what do they say? Champagne taste on a beer budget. I can't remember what it was. I really wanted these like $1 million places, not these big sprawling places, but I loved the architecture and the quality of these particular homes. And I just knew that by the time even if I could afford the base price, even though I could afford the base price, by the time I put in all the upgrades, I was going to be so far in that it was going to be in the high 8s or 9s. And here in Vegas, that's luxury. So I said, it's probably not the way I want to go. So I kind of took a little bit of a step back and reevaluated. Anyway, once I started going out and looking, something happened where it turns out that and I'm going to talk about this in another video, but it turns out that an opportunity came up for my mother to live across the street from my brother. And she couldn't qualify, and he couldn't yet help her on his own. So I said, you know what, guys, I'm willing to take the risk that I may not be able to buy my house for a year or so to do this, because I don't necessarily know what I want anyway. And I'm still in the process, and I wouldn't even mind staying in my apartment for another year or 2 if that's what it meant. So this is where it all began. Now, we find my mom's house, we make an offer that night, the next day we get a counter, we end up creating getting it all negotiated, and then it's done. We open escrow on Monday. Okay. Now, as a first-time buyer, keep in mind, I'm a first-time buyer. Okay. It's been 20 years since I bought a house, and even then I wasn't part of the loop. So I'm a first-time buyer. I don't understand escrow. Okay. Forget the fact that I'm a real estate agent, because I'm not your typical real estate agent. I'm the girl that sits behind and generates all the leads. So I don't have the knowledge that a lot of real estate agents would about these particular things. So I know enough, of course, having done a few houses myself and in school and learned the process, but I needed to know everything. Okay, so we're in escrow. Then I need to know, what is the timeline for real? What is the timeline? What needs to happen? Day 1, tell me what's about to happen. Okay. Here's what I didn't know. I didn't really have a good understanding that we open escrow on Monday and I'm jumping through hoops by Monday afternoon to get the lender everything they needed. Now, what would have been nice for me would have been to have a list right out of the gate that says, here's what typically your lender is going to ask for. You can start preparing this now. As a matter of fact, that would probably be a good thing to give as a real estate agent, to give to our buyer even earlier on in the process, so they start understanding the things that they have to gather. Because I had to get, Dropbox set up, get a file set up, start putting all of these, 2 years of taxes and all the gazillion bank statements and W-2s if there are any, and all of these things. And the sense of urgency that a lender puts on a buyer, even if there's more time to get it done, is significant. Okay. They start jumping. They want to get things processed quickly, and especially in a market like we're in right now. So I was really kind of in the weeds for about 2 days, gathering all the things. And then, you would send them something and they would say, okay, I need a statement on what this was, or why you applied for this credit, or did you actually obtain any new credit from that, and all of these things. Also, at no time was I given a warning, although I knew it, but I was not given a warning that in the very beginning, and don't take out any new credit, don't buy any car, don't do this, don't do this. I ended up bringing it up. And again, in the defense of people on my side, everybody knows I'm a real estate agent, so they all think I know everything. But still, these are the things just that I'm thinking as a first-time home buyer that I thought I could share with you, okay? I would have liked to have some sort of heads up before I made the offer on the house, and then having it go into escrow, that this is what you need to prepare for right now. These are the things you need to prepare for, okay? The agent in the transaction was my brother. We just kind of we're both agents, so we were kind of doing it together. My brother is going in on the house with me after to put it in a trust. So he was acting more like an investor son brother necessarily than a real estate agent. But he did jump in and give me a bunch of info about the real estate process that he wasn't sure I would remember or not. So that was great. But back to the lending part of it, which was really the biggest struggle for me, was this. That's why I'm talking about it. Okay, now once I jumped through all of those hoops and got them everything, then Jeff was great about saying, "Hey, Lori, we're in the due diligence period," and he sent it to me in writing. Over the next X amount of days, this is what we need to do: get any HOA CC&Rs if there are any. Have the home inspection, have the home appraisal. But during those first 2 days, I was getting all of those links. Order your appraisal, pay for this. Order your home inspection, pay for this. And as a buyer, it's really overwhelming. It's really overwhelming. What I would like from a real estate agent standpoint is for the real estate agent to be kind of holding my hand during those couple of days. I'm just saying, you may not like that or not. But there's too much trust put into the lender, in my opinion, that, okay, the lender's got that. Escrow's got that. Because in my case, they didn't have all those pieces cohesively. So it left me with questions that I would have liked to have before I was even asking them. And then even the drip emails that I was getting were a little off. Things would come after because there was no necessary perfect timeline. I was telling my brother, in a perfect world, what I would like to have for a real estate transaction is the timeline that we can actually move the timeline through the process. So check it off. Okay, now we're in escrow, and now due diligence period starts, and then check it off. So it's not like just a standard 30-day or 45-day escrow that kind of drops those things in when it thinks it's appropriate. They would actually start then. So the lender had a pretty good one that was sending me little videos and things like that, and that was cool. But I would have liked to have a better timeline, a better constant timeline, and the real estate agent knowing step by step what the lender is doing and what the escrow agent is doing. That's what I would have liked. I didn't understand what certain things like, okay, what happens during the appraisal? What if it doesn't appraise? What are the options? Things about the inspection. So those, I personally think that the real estate agent, before the appraisal happens, before the inspection happens, should cover those bases and send some sort of written thing so that the buyer has a little better understanding of that as well. There were some things that had me jumping last minute, like docs and signing and notary signing versus going to the office. And at one point, nobody was really clear that nobody was clear on the fact that the docs had been sent, and we were really only within a day of closing. Another thing was wiring, like the wiring of the earnest money and the wiring of the balance. Each bank handling wiring so differently. But this was the first time I had ever wired money, so I did it completely wrong the first time, thinking I could avoid the $30 same day transfer with my bank, and then come to find out that I was not actually sending the wire, and they were getting denied, and I had to go click that one. It really wasn't clear. It didn't walk me through through that very well. So these are just things, and I don't necessarily have all the answers as a real estate agent of how we do that better. But I personally, in my head, I envision a better list of all the things that happen during the process, and some heads up that this is about to happen, And I think what to avoid is also really important, really making sure that buyer understands. One thing I didn't understand was moving money. So I have many accounts. I have multiple businesses. I have an account for my daughter. I have savings accounts. I have a tax account. I have all this money, and it all flows in very differently. So as I was getting ready to put whatever, $20,000 down on the house, first I had to move the earnest money, the $5,000 earnest money, into a certain account so I could wire that. Then I had to move the down payment money, and I was moving this all. And guess what? Nobody told me this, but I don't know what it was, but I had an instinct that, escrow is still, or mortgage lenders are still having me pull bank statements every 10 days or whatever it is. I wonder if it's going to look weird to have money shuffling like that. And I Googled it, and sure enough, do not shuffle money. Don't move money throughout your accounts when you're buying a house. And so I called my lender, who's super nice, and I said, hey, and she was very present and available every time I had a question. And I messaged her and said, hey, am I okay to keep moving money around? Because what I'm doing is I'm trying to move it all into one account slowly over the process of the 3 weeks, so that then it's there to send the down payment in. And she said, no, don't move money. Don't do that. But nobody had told me that. So it's just kind of one of those things. Even though I didn't do anything wrong, it could have tripped something up. So I think these are important things that we need to come up with in a better way to help our buyers. Okay. Now I'm now buying my second home, and it's new construction, and same thing. It's now I know a lot more because of the first one, except it's completely different. How there's no earnest money. There's just a $15,000 down. There's half of the money in upgrades. There's non-refundable contingencies. There's all kinds of things that I'm learning now for the first time doing it this way. And I would highly recommend that every real estate agent buy one or two houses and sell one or two houses, because, man, I've never learned so much just than by doing. So I know it might sound funny, again, because I'm a real estate agent. I should have known. You might think I should know all this, but based on my position on my team, it's just not something I'm out there doing. So I'm generating leads all day long, and they're handling those transactions. And again, most of them are relying on escrow to handle escrow and lender to handle lender, and they think that they're going to handle all those communication pieces, but I promise you they're not. You may have somebody excellent that is, but I'm going to say as a norm, escrow and mortgage, unless they're somehow connected, aren't necessarily communicating at a super high level. And then wherever the real estate agent is, how well is the real estate agent communicating and depending on those two as well. And I think we need more checks and balances just to make sure that the buyer understands that. One more thing. Well, I should have started with this. Using terms, using real estate lingo and mortgage lingo and escrow lingo, assuming the buyer understands what you're talking about. I cannot tell you how many times I am asking the builder, the real estate agent, the lender, the escrow, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, I keep having to do that because they're using just this slang and whatever that they assume. And I keep saying I'm not a real estate agent in that aspect. Talk to me like I don't know what I'm doing, and like you would somebody that's buying a house for the first time. Yet it's still, like one of the questions was, if I take a college loan, does that mess up my debt to income ratio? Can I still qualify for the house? My daughter's about to go to college. Can I take a college loan? And she says, yes, but we'll have to hit you with 5. Or yes, but we'll have to hit you with 500 or something like that. I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, well, we're going to have to list it as a $500 payment, assume a $500 payment to college or whatever. But it's just that it's that stuff. It's everything. Don't assume the buyer understands closing docs. Don't assume the buyer understands wiring. Don't assume that the buyer understands anything. Especially if they are a first-time home buyer or somebody has not bought in a long time. Take them through the process and make sure they understand. Anyway, I hope that helps somebody today improve your processes. I'm Lori Ballen in Las Vegas with Lori Ballen Team.